could have an absolute small army when it comes to third-party risk, whether that is kind of, you know, the great unwashed or whether it's Microsoft or anyone else, and good luck auditing AWS. And everywhere in between, you know, a large part comes down to, what do you provide me? For a start, you provide me pencils. Excellent. Spreadsheet, done. You know, that spreadsheet is how many pencils do I want? All the way through to kind of, you administer my entire HR database and it's in your cloud, and, you know, and I want to get deeper and deeper and deeper. You know, we're not really going to audit them. We're not going to have the time. We might do spot checks and a little bit deeper dive and show us a bit of certification. Can you tell me when you last had an incident? Guess when? Never. Unless it was in the press, you know, no one ever.
How do we think about, you know, engaging with third parties? You know, we've all got to interface with somebody somewhere. We've all got to take some data from another system. We've got customers, for example. How do we think about the cyber risks outside of our organization, and what can we do to kind of tackle those things? You want to give that a go first, Kerry?
Yeah, I think all of it comes down to risk again, right? So it's like, who are your third parties? What do they have access to, and how much do you care about it?
It's not showing you work for an insurance company at all.
Well, realistically, that is what it comes down to, because you do always have to try and find that balance. Because if you try and protect yourself, like, how far down do you go? Because those third parties also have third parties, and then the third parties of the third parties have third parties. How far down the chain do you go to try and make sure that you're secure? And how do you balance going that far versus the impact it's going to have? So I think that's essentially what it comes down to. You look at what your perimeter is. I don't really believe that there's much of a perimeter anymore. And what's the impact of whatever the event or outcome is from managing that third party, and then you try and balance it appropriately. If it's something that's particularly sensitive that you care about, you do extra due diligence, and maybe you go 2 layers deep on that third party and what are the systems they're using, and et cetera.
And do we think we've got a right to do that? I mean, I'm seeing increasingly us writing that into our contracts with partners, where we're going, we want to be able to audit your entire estate. And they're coming back and saying, why do you want to audit? And we're like, because we don't trust you. You know, that's the answer, right? So how do you deal with that? Can we go deep? Should it be legal?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, but it's a tough one as well, right? Because there's an expectation upon organizations, whether you're an e-commerce business, you're handling personal information, you've got this regulatory compliance, that compliance. You have to, you know, be in a position to be able to provide assurance, right? To the board, to the audit committee, to the exec, right? To the market, right? Mm-hmm. There's an expectation to be able to trade and transact, you know, legally, and with the appropriate reputation. But doing that in means and ways that affords you a level of nimbleness, you know, agility, and doesn't, you know, rule you out of a market or a particular set of, you know, competitive, you know, advantages, makes it much, much more difficult. So I think, as we've been saying for the last half an hour, it's about finding that right balance, yeah? It's about finding the right risk appetite. We are certainly seeing, and I see it, I mean, a big part of our business is B2C, but a growing part of it is business to business, right? And there's an expectation, as we transact in this omni-channel world, that more and more of that will be, actually, we want to transact with Trainline, but we want to transact with Trainline knowing that you've got a SOC 1, SOC 2, you know, a significant level of, you know, attestation, which as a e-commerce tech business, we wouldn't ordinarily have. But there's almost now a marketability element for us. So when I go to the board now, it's actually, so we're becoming 27001, which we never even thought about doing 3 years ago. Why would we? With a view of going, you know, SOC 1, SOC 2 in the next 2-3 years, because the expectation is, actually, if we're going to transact and win and gain and erode business from our competitors, that's a differentiator, right? So it becomes the business advantage, as well as doing the right thing, putting the ticks in the boxes, making sure we meet our compliance obligations. So it's twofold, right?
But and I agree, but that's you speaking, you know, how you want to present yourself to the world, right? We want our suppliers and our partners to behave like that. So Ed, what do we do if they're not?
I mean, generally speaking, when it comes to third-party risk, the answer is really simple, is that we just send them an infosecurity spreadsheet to fill in, and then we send them a GDPR questionnaire, which the first question is probably, are you GDPR compliant? And that's it, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's it. We're done. Let's go to the pub.
I mean, to be honest, and I say that in jest because we still do it, and probably all of you do it as well, and it makes me die a little bit inside. Yeah, every single time. And then we never touch it again. We literally get it back and go, oh, they've got firewalls. What rules are on them? Oh, I don't care. It says any something. I jest slightly, but it's true. I mean, the main thing is kind of, you know, you could have an absolute small army when it comes to third-party risk, whether that is kind of, you know, the great unwashed or whether it's Microsoft or anyone else, and good luck auditing AWS. And everywhere in between, you know, a large part comes down to what do you provide me? For a start, you provide me pencils. Excellent. Spreadsheet, done. You know, that spreadsheet is how many pencils do I want? All the way through to kind of you administer my entire HR database and it's in your cloud, and, you know, and I want to get deeper and deeper and deeper. You know, we're not really going to audit them. We're not going to have the time. We might do spot checks and a little bit deeper dive and show us a bit of your certification. Can you tell me when you last had an incident? Guess when? Never. Unless it was in the press. You know, no one ever kind of owns up to that one, do they? No. You know, it's that sorry, it depends, that pragmatism of a case of where do I see the greatest risk, and I acknowledge there's going to be a huge amount of blind spots within even that one, let alone the rest of them, where I need to conjoin it with some of my preparedness, my procedures, my ability to respond even when it's a third party if they own up to it, you know.
All right, so proportionate response, proportionate engagement, depending on how you're engaging with them and what they're doing. So that's okay, but Phil, AI, automation, tech's got to be our friend here, hasn't it? Right? There are ways and means that we could, because what I resonated with me in what Ed said was like, we check it once, we do a bit of diligence at the start, and then we just forget that they could change stuff, right? So we can use tech to help us with that, can't we?
I don't think any individual company can. I think a number of people have tried to. If you look at the matrix of sort of suppliers and consumers of this stuff, and the amount of effort that gets wasted exchanging spreadsheets and all of that stuff, there's a huge opportunity for kind of shared due diligence. And a number of companies have tried to do it where, you know, the suppliers will go and register, these are all our controls, etc. People can subscribe to that and say, oh, they've got this gold tick, etc. But in reality, the only things that are out there at the moment are ISO 27001 and SOC 2 Type 2 that aren't particularly sort of correlated with how secure an organisation is. Well, sorry, they don't prove that an organisation is secure, but they do give an indication that they've got a security program, that they invest in security. So I think for the vast majority of organisations, you can dress it up with spreadsheets and process and all of that type of stuff. But my rule of thumb would be ask them if they've got ISO 27001, ask them if they've got SOC 2 Type 2. If they have, they're probably okay to do business with. And, you know, you can spend a lot more money on that, but you're probably not going to get a lot more insight.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So for a bunch of security guys, you're very trusting here. You're like, if people have got a couple of certificates, you're like, yeah, they're good, we're going to go for it, and we don't have to worry about anything.
I think it's just being realistic, right? You know, the big players, right? You know, the people that everyone will be doing business with, your mega cloud providers, your Salesforces, your ServiceNows, etc. They aren't going to fill in your spreadsheet. And frankly, the safety in numbers, right? They've got hundreds of thousands of customers. They invest more in security than you'll ever be able to in your organisation. So I think you've just got to look at it from a distance and say, well, if I'm doing something with this mega corporation with hundreds of customers or thousands of customers, I'll probably be okay. If I'm dealing with this little startup who's only got like 5 people, I should probably kick the tyres a bit more on it.
All right, I think that's really good. I like the idea of balance. We talked about balance, we talked about risk. I think that's great. Thanks very much.